All right. So there we go. Now I am finally ready to do some more recording. So here we go. So, welcome to part 2 of my discussion on Three Houses. So, quick little jump before we get started here. As I stated before, we are in full spoilers mode. Okay? So, spoilers, spoilers. Okay? From here on out, I'm just going to be spoiling the whole game. Full tilt. So this is your big warning. I'll probably make sure to mention that during the other pathways, because the way this is going to work is I'm going to talk about white clouds, the pre-time skip stuff, and and the Incindered Shadows here, and then I'm going to go ahead and move on to having each of the time skips of the different houses be each their own separate video. So one for Azure Moon, one for Silver Snow and Crimson Flower, because the Black Eagles is split into two, and of course, one for Verdant Wind. In that order, that's my recording order, but you don't necessarily have to watch them in that order. But I will be, that's the order I'm going to be labeling them in, so there you go. So, white clouds. Let's get into the narrative, shall we? It's funny because I actually have my first note is actually about Byleth, but we'll get into that in a bit. So we actually start with the battle between Saros and Nemesis. Well, I hope you're not going Blue Lions, because if you are, this opening scene is pretty much pointless. Like, almost entirely pointless. So then we transition to Sothis waking up, which I guess makes more sense that it's just a memory of Sothis, but regardless. Excuse me. So Sothis wakes up, and then we select our gender, we select a name for Byleth, blah, 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 blah. But that's actually where I really want to start, is Byleth. Fire Emblem tends to have 3 distinct types of avatar characters, and I should probably turn off my monitor because, duh. Anyways, Fire Emblem tends to have 3 distinct types of avatar characters, and it's pretty much it pretty much is determined by the style that they go with. I do not know the official terms, forgive me, but I usually tend to think of this as because there are 3 different types of Avatar X characters. There's the Warden, the Shepherd, and I guess we can just basically say I guess we could just call that the Mark, Eric, basically, from Blazing Sword or Blazing Blade. I keep hearing it as different things. I mean, Blazing Blade would make sense. It makes most sense as the proper translation, because as Binding Blade. But regardless, but the 3 distinct types are very simple. You have there's the Warden is basically full tilt, Dragon Age, right? You craft their story, you craft their decisions, you craft everything about them, right? very few things are out of your control in Dragon Age in terms of your role playing capabilities, right? The D&D approach, basically, a full D&D character, right? Then there's the shepherd method, which is your avatar has a backstory and stuff, and you have a little bit of control over the backstory, but not much. And then from there on out, you can customize the character how you will. And then there's, of course, the mark, where you have absolutely no control whatsoever, and they are basically literally just meant to be an audience proxy. Now, it'd be probably more appropriate to say that there are three distinct types of, because Fire Emblem doesn't really go full tilt into the BioWare method of character creation, because we're not able to really make our choices. Although a BioWare Fire Emblem would be amazing, just saying. Let us craft our very own stories and basically have it be like a very pick your own narrative thing. And no, this and Fates do not count. No, these are the bare bones of dipping your toe into the pool, so to speak. You know, this is literally just choose which storyline you want to follow. Hello, instead of crafting the story around us, right? Like, give me the option to use my charm to get Edelgard the hell out of this warpath of hers, you know. But we'll get to that. We'll get to that a bit later. Now, it basically boils down to how much character each avatar has. It's basically, at this point, we might as well consider it the Mark, the Robin, and the Corrin, basically. Uh, the No, I guess just Mark and Corrin would be the two ways to think of that. Because Robin is basically a full character in their own right, which is actually the persona method. I was trying to think of how to phrase that, but yeah, no, it's basically the Dragon Age method, the Mass Effect method, and the persona method. That was what I was trying to think of. The persona method is there's no character; it's literally just an audience proxy. Let's see. The shepherd character is there's a bit of backstory, which you may or may not get to choose, and you just kind of craft different choices that the character makes. And that would be what the approach with Robin, although that's more gameplay than with character, right? Because Robin can be whatever class, right? The you know and then of course the warden is of course Dragon Age, full customization of not only their appearance and backstory and how their backstory goes, and how their origin goes, and yada yada yada, but you have full capabilities of everything, basically, within reason, of course, but you get my point. Robin is very much the shepherd approach, as is Corrin, although Corrin's a bit of a is a bit of an interesting case. Byleth is very much a persona protagonist. And I don't mean that as an insult, not really. What I mean is that they don't really Byleth does not really have a character of their own, especially if you're going male Byleth. God, the animation on male Byleth is just wow. And don't even get me started on the voice acting. By the way, I am not touching on Byleth's voice actor replacement. I'm just not bothering, because I don't care. Here, the voice actor changed basically just after release, because the original voice actor was an idiot. Enough said. Broken NFT, if I'm not, or not NFT. Oh, fuck. Ugh. Goddamn NFTs. NDA is what I mean. From what I understand, he broke an NDA, not an NFT. Breaking an NFT is a good thing. Breaking an NDA, not so much. Anyways, my point is that I'm not going to be commenting on that. So Byleth is a blank slate, right? We can project onto them, which is funny because apparently Byleth was originally going to have their own character until they just decided, oh, their heart never beat. It's like, what? Come on, again. I'm all for having having a Robin type avatar. I would prefer them to go more into the whole shepherd thing if they're really going to do this. Give me an avatar that I can customize what they say, customize their personality. Are they more aggressive? Are they more passive? Are they more flirty? There are options, right? Let me craft my own Fire Emblem character, right? I've been wanting that since forever, right? It would certainly make some of the romances feel more personal. Personal, god damn it. you know? But I digress. So then we're introduced to Geralt, voiced by David Lodge. I have decided that I'm not going to go into the whole spiel about David Lodge here, mostly because I've already done that in my Cold Steel 2 video, so there's no real reason to no real reason to rehash it, and because Gerald is just kind of there. Although it's kind of weird that he's also the narrator for the main game, which is just, huh? But whatever. So then we're quickly introduced to our three main lords, Edelgard, Dimitri, and Claude. We help them deal with Costas, is the bandit who attacks. If the name is like, wait, who? I don't blame you because he is so irrelevant to the plot. It's not even funny. And he is literally just the first bandit you take down. That's his only relevance to the story. So we go into the tutorial, we get some tutorialization, and then we're introduced to Alois. I don't like Alois, just to be blunt. Alois is very much a character that feels like he's... How do I put this? He feels like he's obnoxious. He feels like a fanboy, but in like all of the negative aspects of that, right? Excuse me. And it feels like he recommends Byleth for the position of professor simply because he's Gerald's, simply because Byleth is Gerald's child, and that's dumb. Like everybody else protests this, it's except for Rhea, right? Like everybody looks at Byleth with suspicion, like what the hell, you know. But then again, well, okay, it's more because of Rhea taking an interest. But I imagine, because I imagine the reaction to Alois making the recommendation was, "Oh, Alois is being a moron again, and must be Tuesday, or, to be more accurate, must be a day that ends in Y." Anyways, so I skipped over the lords just because I'm going to be discussing them later. But let's talk. But I guess suppose let's go ahead and talk about them because there's Edelgard from the Adrestian Empire, Dimitri from the Holy Kingdom of Fargus, and Claude from the Leicester Alliance, and each of them are also effectively the heirs to each region. Edelgard is the Imperial Princess. As Dimitri is the Crown Prince. And and Claude is the next Duke Regent. Excuse me. God damn it. Hint. Right? I do like the idea of a continent basically being governed, having three different regions, three different kingdoms, and they're being governed by a central organization, specifically the Church of Saros and the Knights of Saros. I do like that idea, but I will. It's just who's in charge of all of that I have an issue with. Specifically, Rhea. I'm gonna go ahead and go on record right now and just say point blank, I honestly think Rhea is a villain in this game. I do. The game will treat her like she's this saint, and there's so many people that just adore her and love her and think she's the greatest thing ever, and she's so kind, she's so wonderful, she's so great. It's like, yeah, Cyril, she's so kind and wonderful that if you cross her even a little bit, she'll fucking execute you. As she does with the Western Church members. Like, ugh. God. Ugh. I mean, it's skipping ahead on my notes by quite a bit, actually. Oh, no, there he is. It's skipping a few notes, but yeah, no, that's Cyril, her adoptive son. No, let's call him what he is. He's Rhea's fucking simp. And she's got a few of those. Even characters where it makes no fucking sense for them to be simps for her, which leads us to Sedith. you know? I swear these segues are not actually really planned. It's just, yeah, no, it just flows naturally. Sedith is Rhea's right hand man. And the problem with him is that he questions Rhea on some of Rhea's decisions, but they are completely pointless because nothing comes of them. Ever. I question you, Rhea. Don't question me. Okay. Anyways, Sedith is awesome though. He is definitely one of my favorite characters, mostly because I feel like he's an overprotective father done right, but we can get into that when we discuss as Flane. So then we're introduced to Hanneman and Manuela. Hanneman is very much a studious person, which is funny because he he's another example from Fire Emblem of all things that just makes me question why the hell Atlas had to frickin' recast him. Which is funny because they actually recast him in frickin' Persona 4 Arena Ultimax too. Like, what? Like, just what the hell? And for some people, that makes Ultimax harder to go back to. But I'm not gonna go into it. I'm not gonna go into it. I'm just gonna leave that can of worms closed. Thank you. Anyways, is so then Manuela, and then there's Manuela. It's nice that Veronica Taylor is getting voice acting roles again because, yeah, she deserves to get away from the stigma that is being a 4Kids voice actor, which a few of them actually have, which is nice. He's he's right. Uh, freaking Michael Center Nicholas has done that. Uh, Sorry, excuse me. Veronica Taylor has done that. I'm sure there's probably a few others that I'm forgetting, but yeah. Yeah. So then we are basically introduced, most with little blurbs from the house leaders about each of their stuff. The first one you encounter, unless you don't move forward, but you instead go to like the right, the right. I want to say, yeah, no, I'm right. If you immediately turn to the right and go that way, is Edelgard, and she will then give you little blurbs about fellow Black Eagles. There's Hubert, who is delightful and well voiced by Robbie Damon. I have nothing but I will probably be gushing about several of these characters because I absolutely love them. Hubert is one of them. I may not like how what happens with Hubert in the narrative, ditto Edelgard, but them as characters, oh hell yeah. There's a reason why in my setting I just basically get all of these characters, bring them, and convince them to stop being dumb if they're being dumb, and then cart them over into my setting. You know, their eyes open with their eyes opened. Yeah, they're getting the hell into my setting. Absolutely. Hubert is definitely on that list. Is as well as Edelgard, as well as Dimitri, Eitri, oh, it's so good. So then we're introduced to then the next one on the list is Ferdinand. All right, I didn't do this in part one mostly because part one I'm sticking with the original recording on that if I still have it. I didn't do this because I didn't think to, either because it was before or because I didn't think to. At the time of this recording, the news has already broken that Billy Kometz passed away because of cancer, and that absolutely sucks. I, of course, will be mentioning this from my perspective tomorrow during the Three Hopes run. During my run of Three Hopes, which God, I hope this is gonna be as I drop it. I hope this is gonna be a good game because that would be awesome for Billy Kometz's final game to be an awesome one. Final role to be awesome. He, of course, voices Ferdinand von Eyre. Memes aside, death sucks, and I am going to speak with reverence and this is why I'm trying to speak with reverence. So, I'm going to offer a brief moment of silence for Billy Kometz. Maybe overkill, but I will be doing that on stream as well because, yeah, yeah, of course I will. But the character Ferdinand is great too. So there's that. You know, the constant rivalry. His insistence on being a rival to Edelgard is just hilarious. His actual rivalry with Hubert is just gold, in my opinion. And he's also not a noble that seems to have a harsh stick up his ass. You know. Well, we'll get into one where I just want to smack him with his stupid proclamations of with the whole noble obligations thing in a bit. Then there's Caspar, loud and proud of it. I like Caspar. He's energetic. He's rambunctious. he is the most likely to have the Naruto cosplay, but I would honestly take him over Naruto any day of the week. No, I don't care how powerful Naruto is. Character-wise, I'll take Caspar. Then there's Lindhart. Lindhart is honestly a character that I like, but not usually one that is my go-to. Like when I think of the Black Eagles, that's who I think of. But then again, he's got a lot of competition because I mean, for God's sakes, five of my favorite characters in this game are all in the Black Eagle house. So that's really just so that that's saying something. Speaking of my favorite characters ever, Bernadetta. Oh my god, Bernie is amazing. Yes, true. Some of I've oh I knew it. I'm gonna be killed because I have affronted you by existing. Oh God, relatable AF is all I'm gonna say to that. Yeah, Bernie is definitely one of those people where it's just like, no, no, Bernie, you're coming with me. We're we're gonna embrace this, and you're going to have a loving home. You're not gonna die on you're not gonna die on Aelgard's stupid fire hill. Fuck that. Then there's Dorothea and Petra. Now Dorothea, okay, Dorothea in many ways to some people could be seen as as having feminist tendencies is how I want to put that. I want to just say that I know where they're coming from with that, mostly with the stick up her ass about the nobility, but let me just be blunt, that's more of a reaction to the nobility having a stick up its ass. See, when you're a good person, Dorothea will have respect for you. If you're a stuck up if you're a stuck up noble who stuck up jackass who just looks down his nose at other people, then yeah, she's not going to respect you because duh, right? And then there's Petra. Petra is wonderful. I love Petra's unique take, and it's very interesting that her big character flaw is actually the fact that she can understand Fonlin's language, either English or Japanese, depending on the version you're playing. Excuse me, sorry. Reading and writing it, yeah, that's perfectly fine. But speaking it, now that's tricky for her. Now, what's funny is that actually makes a large degree of sense, even in the Japanese version, because Japanese has a lot of different nuances in how you say a word. So, yeah, reading and writing it, easy to learn. Speaking it can also be tricky. You have to get a handle on it. So no, that makes perfect sense. Then if we follow the path line in well, I guess it's more pathway down, we would then notice Claude, who introduces us to the golden deer. Lawrence. Remember the whole thing where I said in a bit we would be talking about a noble with a stick up his ass? Lawrence is a pain in the ass, and honestly, what's funny is he was the biggest source of story negatives for me, more so than mostly in his supports. I think it was something stupid like 4 of his support conversations got negatives, And by the way, I only gave positives or negatives to the chains. So those were 4 chains that were just terrible bad, you know? His one with Raphael, I'm pretty sure was a negative. It's weird because I still think going Golden Deer is the best route, and yet the Golden Deer gave me so many support negatives that it was just like, what the hell, you know? But yeah, no, Lawrence is just annoying, and also he is the one in the most pathways that acts like a goddamn idiot and decides to be against you even if you recruit him. I hate that so much. Ash is the other one that does that. Ash is the one that does that if you go Vert and Wind, by the way. I think he also goes against you. Oh, excuse me. Oh. I think he also does that if you go Silver Snow as well, which is just dumb. Then there's Raphael. Well, you always gotta have you always have to have the big, not that intelligent, tough guy, right? Tough guy, heart of gold. Well, not much going on upstairs. The big guy, right? Raphael. I do like him as a character, although his comedy is very hit or sorry. His comedy is very hit or miss for me. Lysithea. God damn it, too many people treat her like a child, and that leads to her. I don't know. Lysithea is great in gameplay, but honestly, story wise, I feel like I need to limit how often I have Lysithea around. She's not a bad character, and I do enjoy her immensely, but yeah. Some of her support conversations are just, what the fuck am I watching at times. They get better in the A supports, which is the other reason why I decided to not do it by chain rather than by individual ranking. God damn it! If I could just stop yawning, I gotta stay up today. Damn it! Then there's Ignatz. Ignatz is Ignatz is interesting in the fact that, how do I put this? He feels honestly he feels the most out of place, even with Bernie there. Ah! Ugh. Sorry, Joy-Con grip. Excuse me a moment, actually. Nose was a bit runny for some reason. But anyways. Anyways. But yeah, no, Ignatz feels honestly the most out of place. Like, honestly, he feels like he should go be a painter. Painter, right? Think Elliot from from Trails of Cold Steel. Just, I don't know, something about Ignatz is just not as well characterized as Elliot. I think it's just because he doesn't have as many chances to shine, if I'm honest. Then there's Marianne, and who honestly needs to have more goddamn confidence in herself. I mean, Jesus. Like, the most accurate way I can portray how Marianne sees herself is the character of Happy from the Ashen Wolves summons monsters every time she sighs. And there's a fan comic where Happy sighs and Marianne shows up. If that ain't an accurate representation of how Marianne feels about herself. Also, she's good with animals, which is actually very nice. Then there's Leonie, Gerald's apprentice. It's apprentice, which apparently he doesn't really mention all that often, which is honestly I feel like Harold should be discussing more things with Byleth. Now I get the idea is he didn't want Rhea to basically know of Byleth's existence, but that's mostly just because of well, like excuse me. That's mostly just because of Sothis being in their head. So there's that. Leonie also feels like she strives very hard to be independent, and it kind of leads to her being arrogant and play at times. Honestly. So then we go and talk to Dimitri, and we learn about Dedu, who's from Dusker and is fiercely loyal to Dimitri. Felix, who's all about strength. Ash, who's earnest and hardworking, and honestly is another character that gets crapped on way too much in this. Sylvain, because you've always got to have that frickin' flirtatious jackass. Yes. Mercedes, because you always have to have the kind and soft-spoken healer. Annette, because you always have to have the bubbly bundle of joy. Ingrid, who's constantly being pissy at Sylvain. Like, honestly, Ingrid, just go be with Sylvain and get it over with. I mean, granted, in my setting, that doesn't happen, but you get my point. So then Flame shows up and introduces herself as Sedith's little sister Flame. I pointed it out on the stream, but note the way she introduces herself. Yeah, that's a cover story. The whole sister thing is a cover story. But I digress. So then Henneman talks to us about crests. As which which are inherited through blood and all of that good stuff. They're more in terms of gameplay, except for something we'll get into a bit later. So just keep that in the back of your mind. So then, if we've beaten the DLC and have actually unlocked access to Abyss, as before, which I actually think happens in chapter 3 or 4, well, now is the point where we can actually go down to Abyss. Abyss is a very interesting location. It is effectively it is effectively the underside of Garrick Mach. It's basically Garrick Mach's version of which I haven't even talked about the monastery yet. So Garrick Mach Monastery is effectively the central point of Fodlan and is the headquarters of the Church of Saros, obviously. And Abyss is kind of the underside of that. Abyss is basically where the dregs end up. Effectively where the Church of Saros will throw people that they don't want to deal with, or people that haven't done anything wrong enough to warrant getting killed. They are basically thrown into the underground, basically thrown into the sewers and told fend for yourself. It's really freaking stupid. I do like that Abyss kind of has some leadership in the form of Yuri and by extension the Ashen Wolves, but that's mostly just because out of necessity, because of course they've done that. Abyss is interesting, and yet Abyss is also underutilized in my opinion. You know, Honestly, I think Abyss could have been an interesting way to have, lead to a golden route, but whatever. I still say there should have been a golden route, but again, we can get into that a bit later. Let's talk about each of the Ashen Wolves. So there's Yuri, as I mentioned. I love how they're effectively two schemer characters, Claude and Yuri. Claude's schemes are more about him being silly, like ha ha ha, I've got schemes up my sleeve. Yuri is more the cold tactician. It is more the more like the kind of guy he's got schemes, but he's less a, how do I put this? If I were to compare this to people from Star Trek, heck, Claude is Garrick from Deep Space Nine. Fine. I'm gonna throw up a bunch of fireworks to distract you. To distract you. Yuri Yuri's the cold fish. The kind of person who he cares. He is Odo, effectively. He is the cold fish, and he will put up barriers, and he will have no hesitation about dealing with you if he has to, but he also cares. It's just what he cares about is very specific and very precise. And what he cares about is his people. And I like that. Then you got Balthus. Again, gotta have the big dumb tough guy with an heart of gold. Balthus effectively makes Raphael irrelevant in a lot of cases, and honestly almost makes me wish Raphael wasn't even a character in this game at all, as awful as that sounds. But he is there, and his character and he's a good character, so nothing to really complain about. Balthus is just awesome, and I love his dynamic with Hilda. And yes, I absolutely ship Hilda with Balthus. Absolutely. And then I skipped over to the frickin' ladies because of course I did. Ugh. So we got to talk about. So now we got to talk about Constance and Happy. Constance is very interesting because Constance is. She basically has two sides to her personality. It's not really split personality, but it might as well be. Because she is effectively two different people, whether she's in the shade or whether she's in the sunlight. In the shade, she is the noble, the haughty. Yo, I am of the noble house Nouvelle. I will restore my house, and it will be glorious. Well, in the sun, she's always so self-loathing to the point of Jesus. Jesus, you make me and Lore combine the self-loathing of me and the Lore Runner combined look tame by comparison, you know? Because she is like, I am lower than the dirt. I am unworthy. Or even someone like Balthus, even just glancing in my direction, action is more than I deserve. God, no, Coco, come on. That one is admittedly would be a lot trickier to deal with, but then again, my setting actually has good therapists, so there you go. It actually has good therapists, so there you go. And then there's Happy. As I mentioned, Happy is the girl who sighs and then monsters appear. God, have to get Happy. You told people I haven't sighed in 5 years? What the fuck, Chatterbox? Chatterbox is what she calls Byleth, by the way. She also comes up with nicknames for like everybody. Demetrius, Dee Dee, Edelgard is 80. Edie. Constance is Coco. Oh, Byleth is Chatterbox, like I said. And Yuri is Yuri Bird. Balthus is B. He. She calls Hubert the Burt. Of all things to call Hubert, why the Burt? Or, you know? I forget what her nickname for Claude is, admittedly, but yeah. So yeah, I like the Ashen Wolves. They are awesome. So then we deal with some bandits, we deal with some stuff, and then we start getting introduced to some heroes relics as we go to try and deal with Lord Lenato. The heroes relics are frankly stupid, in my opinion, as to why the hell anybody would seek them out. Now, granted, that's mostly because Rhea is once again keeping critical information to herself, because of course she is. But in this case, I at least can understand why. Because, well, if you're unworthy, aka if you don't have a crest, then the hero relic has a decent chance of taking you over. Excuse me. The relic has a decent chance of taking you over and turning you into a demonic beast. Which is not fun. It's actually kind of one of the more despicable things of all and that happens. I mean, that's what happens with Miklon, for example. Simple. So we go deal with Lenato, and Ash is distraught at it because I'm sorry, I do agree with Lenato that she is an infidel, and she has deceived the people. Again, like I said during my OC mode talk, uh, bonus VOD, no, yeah. Rhea's crimes do need to be dragged out into the light. Absolutely. Although it does piss me off because Lenato's rebellion literally has no follow up, and that's the biggest problem with so much of this game's story. So then we can recruit Anna. I already said my piece of why recruiting Anna was terrible, but to reiterate, the novelty is gone. She has no story relevance, and she has no supports. Yeah. So then we go and we deal with what the Western Church was really after, with the instead of the assassination plot, with this, which was the excuse me, oh, sorry, ah, which was found on a secret note on Lenato's person when he was defeated. And we gain the sword of the creator, which can only be wielded effectively by Byleth. All because of Sothis being in their head, which makes perfect sense, actually. So then Rhea shows how cruel she is by just executing the Western Church without even trying to figure out if they were working with somebody, maybe behind the scenes or something, like, oh, I don't know, whoever's actually pulling the strings behind the Death Knight. So then Reyes gives us the sword of the creator to use as we see fit, which setteth protests. Again, it goes nowhere. His big point is that if somebody like Nemesis were to show up again, and remember I mentioned him from the beginning of the game, yeah, that would be bad. Moving on. So then we're so then Hanneman pulls us in and reveals to us that we are actually in use of the crest of flames, and this is why we can use the sword of the creator, because our crest is the crest. The crest that is the most associated with the sword of the creator, which, by the way, the reason for that is the crest stone embedded in Byleth's chest. But we can get into that more later. So then we're told about a disinherited son of Gautier known as Miquelon. And this is where we got to talk about a couple of things. So I already mentioned the whole you turn into a demonic beast if you have no crest. But let's talk about the whole crest versus ability note I have here. Crests are having a crest gives you way too much political power in Fodlan, in my opinion. Just straight up, way too much political power. Now, the reason I say that is because so much emphasis is placed on the on crests that it's crest this, crest this, crest that, crest this, crest that, crest this, crest that, constantly. Meanwhile, Meanwhile, there are people with perfectly reasonable amounts of talent that you're just ignoring and sweeping under the rug. Did Miquelon have a chance? No, because Sylvain's dad is a fucking moron. And that's my problem. Right? It's actually one of the things that leads to Sylvain's attitude towards the whole thing. Right? Now, he seems like a player who's just, who thinks with his dick. But here's the thing. Sylvain is basically looking at that, again, in the wrong way, I will admit, but is just looking at that and going, well, these women just want me for my crest. That's all they want. They want my crest. I mean, if they wanted me for my dick, at least that'd be something. But no, they just want me because I will make powerful babies and I will make them rich. You can see the problem. It's the equivalent of someone marrying someone else for their money. You know, it's just as bad. Now, Dimitri is like one of the only people who at this point actually does make this debate. I forget what Aelgar does, and Claude basically just. And then Claude has got more interesting ideas. But Crest's ruling over Fodlan, like I said, really shouldn't be a thing. It should be a balance point between between crests and ability. Because otherwise, what reason is there for anyone without a crest to be motivated to do anything? I'm not gonna amount to anything. I don't have a crest, so fuck it. And that's just fucking stupid. Like, just I don't agree with eliminating the crests entirely as Edelgard wants to. I told you we're on full tilt spoilers here. But I also don't agree with the whole make them the central focus of everything. You know? I mean, it's not like crests automatically make you it's not like having a crest will make you be able to defeat Goku or some shit. Like, come on. So then Flame is kidnapped, apparently by the Death Knight, and then we're introduced to the Flame Emperor. Ugh. So the Flame Emperor, as I've already given away at this point, is this big mystery. Who is this Flame Emperor? Who is behind the mask? And yada yada yada. And I hate that. I hate it because so many people basically are like, "Oh, the Flame Emperor reveal was so shocking on the Blue Lions route." I would argue it's actually more blatant who it is in the Blue Lions route than in any other route. In the Golden Deer route, oh yeah, I could absolutely believe that you would be shocked that it was Edelgard. In the Blue Lion route, I'm just sitting there going, why was anybody fucking fooled by this? The narrative is literally putting up giant neon signs. The Flame Emperor is Edelgard in both Blue Lions and Black Eagles. It is blatantly apparent in the Black Eagles. But in my opinion, it's even more apparent in the Blue Lions. Because in the Blue Lions, you literally have Dimitri talking about his past with Edelgard. You have finding out that Edelgard is his stepsister or however that is. His half sister. His sister because of his stepmother. You find out that Arendelle, and then, which by extension makes Arendelle Edelgard's uncle, Dimitri's uncle, which you know, then there's the fact that the Flame Emperor had the exact dagger that Dimitri apparently gave to Edelgard when they were kids. Like, come on, seriously, you cannot tell me that that's not freaking blatant. Hayden. Like, it would actually be more shocking if it wasn't Edelgard. Art, and instead it was like frickin' I don't know, Arendelle or Edelgard's mother or something, right? That actually would have been a fantastic twist. Instead of the Flame Emperor being Edelgard, have the Flame Emperor be Edelgard's mother. That would have been interesting. It also would have begged the question as to why she waited until now to reveal herself, but you get my point. So now let's go with the Cinder Shadows DLC. Now, there is Cinder Shadows cannot exist in the same continuity as the main game, especially with the Ashen Wolves being playable characters. But I'm gonna go through it here anyway. The Rite of Rising, which it allows somebody to resurrect another, is an interesting concept. It kind of begs the question if resurrection is even truly a thing. Now, I would understand if, for example, oh fuck. Mm, come on, body. Let's get through this. I would understand if the Rite of Rising was if resurrection was so difficult that you basically could only ever do it like once and under specific conditions. You know, kind of like how it was with Sothis and with Byleth. Then we're introduced to the idea of the three lords uniting. Which again, it just keeps being a thing. The game keeps teasing me with the idea of a golden root and keeps yanking it away. To all of those people who said that Revelations ruined Fates, screw you because this is the fucking result. A game whose narrative is begging for a golden root that just doesn't have one. The reason it didn't work in Fates is because Fates was set up so that it should have been just two separate stories. But no, they had to have Revelation. So then the Ashen Wolves challenge us, and it's actually pretty cool. Cool. We prove ourselves. Then we learn that Abyss has been constantly attacked. Then we go to the arena to deal with that, which Yuri was luring them there so that we could have a better arena to fight them in away from Abyss. Good on you, Yuri. Good use of the tactician. Then we're introduced to Alfric, who is voiced by Michael Sinter Nicholas. I'm not gonna lie, it's actually kind of funny. This is where we also learn about Byleth's mother, Citri. Citri was a priestess, nun of the. She was effectively a member of the Church of Saros, and she fell in love with Geralt, and Byleth became into existence. She was also a vessel for Sothis. That was effectively what her purpose in life was. But giving birth to Byleth was going to endanger both her and Byleth, and so the idea was take out the creststone that is keeping me alive and give it to my child so that they may live. I'll die, but they'll live. I like that idea, although it is still frickin' Rhea pulling bullshit, but let's not get into that. So then the loss of House Nouvelle is talked about. Again, Constance is just trying to restore House Nouvelle because it fell out of favor because of a coup that happened in the Etruscan Empire. Then we go and we find the Chalice of Beginnings to do the Rite of Rising. And then Rhea is extremely reasonable and is actually kind of intelligent. In Cinder Shadows. I keep harping on it, but Rhea is so dumb because, again, it's her way or the highway. And yet in Cinder Shadows, she's actually reasonable and astute. She is literally everything that Cyril will fucking constantly claim she is. Except it's only in Cinder Shadows that she shows this. Whatever, I guess. So then we learn about Yuri's backstory, and how he was effectively just an orphan that was taken in, effectively. Yeah, a lot of them have like kind of orphans or like different things. Things like Yuri's mom, got, got, Yuri got sick. The healer kind of there was a healer, and then Yuri just kind of went out into the world. We're also introduced to the Lost Crests. Yes, which are actually very important to Cinder Shadows. Those. Auburn, Chevalier, Noah, and Timothus. Which is funny because Auburn has a relic. Chevalier, I'm pretty sure, has one. Noah and Timothus, I think, are the ones that don't. For the record, Auburn is Yuri, Chevalier is Balthus, Noah is Coco, and Timothus is Happy. So then we go and we try to rescue Alfric, but it turns out Alfric is actually backstabbing us because the whole reason he gathered the Ashen Wolves was to attempt to use their crests to resurrect Citri. Because dude was kind of crushing hard on Byleth's mom. Like, didn't take her death well. Like, it wasn't to the point of where he was plotting to kill Geralt or any of that nonsense. No, he was perfectly content as long as Citri was happy. But then Citri died, and then he discovered her body mostly intact. And got the idea for the Red Rising, which fails, because of course it does. Then there's Yuri's plan to effectively backstab Alfric, which is just awesome. But then the Rite of Rising goes off, but instead of resurrecting Citri, Alfric becomes the Umbral Beast. Yeah. So then we put an end to Alfric's misery. And then the Ashen Wolves disband and leave. It's a nice ending to the DLC side story, but honestly, it's like, yeah, you can kind of see why I would prefer to just think of it as a non-canon thing, you know. So, anyways, back to the main game. So after we deal with Flane's kidnapping, we get access to War for the Weak. Keep this paralogue in the back of your mind when we get to the Azure Moon video, by the way, because it'll come up there. It's a decent little thing, trying to effectively protect the oh, excuse me a minute. Oh, there we go. Sorry. Trying to protect the citizens of the people of Dusker who are still fighting because, well, the tragedy of Dusker was pinned on them. The king, the death of King Lambert, the thing that Lanato's so pissed off about, which I didn't even mention until now because I'm an idiot. The tragedy of Dusker is what Lanato is so pissed about because his son Kristoff was effectively one of the ones effectively executed for the tragedy of Dusker, which is bullshit because, well, those who slither in the dark are responsible, who I will refer to as Twisted from here on out. That is the group that is working with the Flame Emperor is working with. So, yeah. So then we find out Dimitri and Edelgard are step-siblings. I've already mentioned that. And the Black Eagle route, Edelgard reveals way too much about. Basically hints at her being the Flame Emperor way too hard. But like I said, so did the narrative of the Blue Lions route. So there you go. Then Claude talks about his dream, and this is where we start to learn that Claude is effectively Edelgard with morals. Because he wants people to be equal. He wants people to be, well, have equal say in things. And I like that. Then there's Claude finding the picture of the Immaculate One, which Seth takes away so that nobody else can see it. Because, the library is censored. Not even going to get into that. So then the Ramire Calamity happens. In the Blue Lions pathway, this is where Dimitri's capacity for being vengeful comes into play. Because Dimitri effectively is like, we must crush all of them. Because, because he's crazy, right? Sorry, I'm just looking at something here. But, so yeah, he's like, we must kill all of these evildoers. We must crush them utterly. And then he's like, yeah, no, again, and again, I feel like Dimitri is almost. I honestly feel like Dimitri is a switch flip, which is just. What the hell? You know? I mean, this game can be literally summed up as a whole bunch of characters that should go to therapy don't get to go to therapy. You know? So then we do that. Oh, yeah. So then we deal with that. We are introduced to Solon, who was actually who is the actual identity of Tomas the librarian, and he effectively is just like, yes, we could have done any village we wanted, so we just basically picked one. We just threw we put names on a dartboard and threw a dart, basically, right? Then the Flame Emperor shows up and says that if he knew what Solon was planning, he would have stepped in. Sure, you would have. And then basically gives the whole join the dark side, we have cookies thing. No, no, 80, you join the light side. We've got cake. Like, fuck. Come on. But, anyways. Then escapes, which is dumb no matter what the route. Then there's the ball in the White Heron Cup, effectively to just try and move on from the tragedy as much as possible, which is cool. It's still kind of and if I'm honest, but it's all right. So then your class promises to reunite after 5 years, which is why there's a 5-year time skip. Oh, I've basically already said my piece in the Fire Emblem Awakening video as to why the 5-year time skip is bad. But to reiterate, there's not enough that feels like it's changed, and it just is too long of a time skip. So then there's the encounter in the Goddess Tower, whoever you're closest to, or if you talk to the gatekeeper and you choose somebody, you can actually, have a pinpoint position of it. So then Dimitri talks about his past with Edelgard, and then we encounter Edelgard, the dagger he talks about in the possession of the Flame Emperor. I've already said my piece on that. Let's move on. And then we deal with the monsters at the chapel. And then Kranya kills Geralt. Alright. I have to explain why Geralt's death doesn't work for me, because I was one of those people who basically looked at that and said, I wouldn't give it a negative. No, let's talk about why it's a negative. The more I thought about Geralt's death, the more I've thought about Gerald's death over the years, the more I'm actually in agreement about it getting a negative. And the reason is actually very simple. Gerald's death. Okay, the minor wound thing can be explained away by it being a special type of dagger, but at the same, cursed dagger or whatever. But yeah, no, I do agree that the him dying instantly feels a little off to me, if I'm honest. And it just feels hollow, right? Like they needed Gerald to die for some reason, and they couldn't think of a better way to do it. And honestly, I don't think Gerald should have died. I think Gerald should have died. I don't know. I wish Gerald's death was better. Basically, it just doesn't work because again, it feels like it feels like that should have been a sword instead of a dagger. And I know a sword would have been less concealable, but for God's sakes, nobody would bat an eye at a frickin' officers academy student, which is the school that's located within Garrick Mach, like that we're a professor of. Nobody's gonna would question an officers academy student carrying a fucking sword. Or. And I'm sorry, you're not going to tell me Kranya isn't quick enough to just to unsheath her sword and shove it upwards or it's into Gerald. Like, come on. Because at least then we could say that it pierced more organs, right? But whatever. I do like Dimitri's consoling. Edelgard is kind of harsh, admittedly, because she's like, I am not going to. We don't. You can't spend all your time mourning and yada yada yada. It's been like 3 days when she says that. I honestly wish it had been 3 weeks and have a couple of chapters where you've only got a couple of weeks of actual no really go to it time because you've spent so much time mourning Gerald. I honestly think that would have worked better, you know. Ooh, excuse me. But this game has a real bad sense of time. This game actually does hack. Weirdly enough, has Doctor Who syndrome all over the place. He's admittedly. And then I also like that Claude effectively got a peek at Gerald's diary and wanted a peek at Gerald's diary and actually asks us. And yes, absolutely, I let Claude have the diary. Because why wouldn't I? Claude's a bro, man. I trust Claude, even up to the point that this point in the story. If Golden Deer was the first route I did, oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely, I would have trusted him with it because I think he would have earned it even then. Excuse me. Then there's the exploration after Gerald's death. Ugh, I'm actually tearing up a little bit. Like I've said it before, and I'll say it again. Very little fiction can actually make me feel. Gatekeeper, man. God, I ended up giving Gatekeeper at least one or two positives because he was the one that cemented the plus for the exploration after Gerald's death. Because, oh, oh, fuck, it's hitting me even now. Honestly, Professor, thank you for everything you've done for us. Nothing to report today. As he's just fighting back the tears because he's just like, because I guess because he admired Captain Gerald. You know, as Lawrence said, there's not a single person alive who hasn't heard of Gerald's valor, and even if they haven't, they'll be educated on it pretty quick. Yeah. So this is when an ocean view pops up, which is the paralogue where we find out that Sedith is Flane's father, not brother. I mean, called it. I admit with how overprotective he was and his reaction during when Flame was kidnapped. Yeah, no, no. So then we chase down Kranya. We fall into Solin's trap, and we're sent to the void. Hey, the forbidden spell of Zaharas. Zaharas. And the only way to escape it is for Byleth to gain the power of a god. As Byleth and Sothis merge. Great scene. There's my note about Seth's wasted potential. Which is just really goddamn shame. Then we head into the Holy Tomb, where it is revealed that dun dun dun, the Flame Emperor is Edelgard, and is accompanied by some jackass who I can't pronounce his name. It's Metodi. E. Like it is. I'm pretty sure I'm spelling this right. Metody. Me toady. Anyways, I literally said Metodi. Toady, aka the waste of Todd Habercorn's talents. I stand behind that full tilt, by the way. So then Edelgard is revealed as the Flame Emperor, and this is where we gotta talk about this game's goddamn. We gotta talk about two things here. This is where we gotta talk about this narrative's goddamn hate boner for Edelgard, and the fact that there's no golden root. There are members of the fan community that hate Edelgard with a burning passion. Those people wish they had as hard of a fucking hate boner for Edelgard as this fucking narrative does. And by the way, this is where the F-bombs are really going to start coming in, because I gave this point 3 goddamn negatives to story because this pisses me off. Edelgard is just evil the end according to this game. And I call bullshit on this. Because it is the system itself that is the problem with Fodland. Edelgard is not the cancer eating away at Fodland. Twisted is. Edelgard is an antagonist, yes. But this is like claiming that Edelgard is the main villain. This is like claiming Gul Dukat is the main villain of DS9 when the Dominion exists. I hate this so goddamn much because I this is why I hate that there's no golden root, because this game was setting up for a golden root, and then it just decided to double, triple, and quadruple down on its hate boner for Edelgard. And I hate it. I hate it so fucking much because there's no point to it. There is no point to this game doing that with Edelgard. There is no reason why this couldn't be somebody that Edelgard knew, or somebody like let's say somebody important to Edelgard that we meet along the way. So that way we can have Edelgard being shocked at the reveal or something. You know? I don't know, maybe make it Edelgard's sister or something. And then have your stupid, is this some kind of twisted joke thing. But whatever. So then Edelgard declares war based upon her half-truths. Oh yeah, I should also discuss the Crest Stones. The Crest Stones exist basically to explain why we fight demonic beasts later. And that's it. Oh, I hate the Crest Stones. They were a negative. Because they are an underutilized part of the narrative. And I hate it. I hate it so goddamn much. So then I actually screwed up the order of these notes. So I do like the pre-battle scene with Claude in chapter 12 after Edelgard makes her declaration and everything, because he admits to Byleth that Byleth is his friend, and I like that. I really do. That's a great scene. Claude is legit. He is best boy. Don't at me. So then we get the final cutscene before the time skip after we fight Edelgard. And Rhea transforms. Herm says, I get confused by sunlight. Edelgard transforms into the Immaculate One. There's no reaction to that. The only closest thing we get is Claude being like, "What is going on?" And that's it. And that's just dumb to me. It's like, it's a freaking dragon. Why are you not more in awe? This is the first dragon that has shown up in the entire narrative is so far. What the fuck? And the sad thing is that this is where it's this point in the game that the narrative starts really shitting the bed. I know some people say that White Clouds is where the story's kind of, and then the time skip is where things get interesting. I disagree. The time skip is where everything goes to hell narrative wise. But we can get into that more as we discuss each of the time skip things. Because I wanted to split this up. Because we're already basically at the point now where I've been talking about this game for about 2.5 hours, give or take. Um, Actually, if we go by the old one, so yeah, about 2.5 hours. Hours, right? So I'm gonna chop here, and then I'm gonna go ahead and I am going to segue into the next part. So, in the description below, there will be 3 links. One for Azure Moon, one for Silver Snow and Crimson Flower, and one for Verdant Wind. I thought about putting Silver Snow as its own separate thing, but honestly, that's just going to be too. I think that's going to be too much. Because I don't have a lot to say about Silver Snow other than it sucks, but that's something to get into later. I will, of course, be labeling these part 3, part 4, and part 5, but we will be discussing seeing Azure. From my perspective, I will be discussing Azure Moon next. From your perspective, well, that's what the links in the description are for. So, I'll see you guys in the next part. See you whichever one you click on loads.